Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business experts and real estate leaders. A couple of past shows where we had some fun guests on. We had Chip Gabrino of Topeka Coffee. We had Vondell Burns of Thankless Production. We had Aaron Miller of In Tulsa talking about all the great work that In Tulsa is doing to promote the entrepreneurial scene here in Tulsa. Darren Wong's a local real estate expert focusing on industrial properties. He's doing some cool stuff too. So go back and check out those episodes if you are interested in any of that. Today's episode is brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, we're a full-service property management company helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of property management. Joe, you don't know this, but in the summer of 2021, we had a client out of Colorado drop a non-performing 64-unit single-family scattered site portfolio onto us. He was like, boom, manage this. And I was like, oh my God. So I drove the properties and there were like 25 vacancies. I think he thought there were 7. There were 25. So over the first 4 months, we renovated and leased 24 or 25 homes, brought the portfolio back to life, fixed the deferred maintenance issues, of which there were a ton, put on a bunch of roofs and fixed plumbing nightmares. And then we renewed leases, signed new leases, et cetera. So the point is, it was a rough summer. It wasn't as hot as this summer. So it was better to do it last summer than this summer, but I was running around and we ended up hiring Seth Rice, who's our general contractor, because I was like, I cannot handle all of this. Anyways, doesn't matter what rental you have, a single family home or a huge portfolio of them, a condo, townhome, apartments, we have the management solutions you need. Go to keyrenterpmc.com or email us at info@keyrenterpmc.com. A huge shout out to Mike Bosch, who again, like he's even though he's been on this podcast and he's been on once, he's like always on this podcast because everybody in Tulsa knows Mike Bosch. So when I'm like, how do we know each other? He essentially all roads lead back to Mike Bosch.
I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it.
And I was joking today, by the way, that we had a friend in town when he used to live in like the lofts above 36 degrees north. There was a neighbor of his, Josh Coburn from Australia, who was working on a product to do the like sticky things on the shower so you could put your soap in and your razor. And I actually still use a bunch of them. They're great products. But he had one. And every time Josh would go out of town to do a sales meeting or anything else, Mike would be like, hey, can I borrow your apartment? I've got people coming into town. I need them to stay somewhere. And Josh used to get frustrated because he always felt like his apartment was a hotel. But now I was talking to Noah Bleicher this morning, actually over breakfast. And Noah was talking about Atento being the new social space downtown because everybody's like hosting events there because it's such a great space. And I'm like, Mike's always, it doesn't matter. He takes a lot. He requires a lot. He asks a lot, but he gives back way more than he takes, which is just I've never met somebody like Mike. Anyways, Mike didn't originally introduce us. My father-in-law, David Feiner, actually originally introduced us. You were in private equity and my father-in-law was like shopping me around my first week in Tulsa because I think he just wanted me to stop living in his above his garage, in the apartment above his garage, and make sure that his daughter was taken care of. Little did he know I had plans in the store, but he was like shopping me around to all sorts of institutions around town, just I guess kind of networking and stuff. So that's originally how we met. Probably a couple of minutes, and we've been in touch ever since. But I will shout out to my dad for introducing my father-in-law for introducing us, and shout out to Mike Bosch for being the ultimate connector in the fair city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Anyways, Joey Wignarajah is an amazing human being, managing partner at 19 Days. We're going to get into that, the venture studio here in Tulsa. He started business working as a private equity operator, a consultant in strategic planning at the Pentagon. He was an officer in the U.S. Navy with tours in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Baghdad. Wow. I don't know why the Navy's in Baghdad. I want to hear about that too. Like the Navy, there's no, I guess, anyways. He's got a master's in public policy from Harvard, an MBA from MIT, and a bachelor's in computer engineering from Tulane. What an amazing human being, a crazy resume.
It's a lot of professional ADD. It all makes sense if you let me weave it together and it's some grand big story. Yeah.
I love it. That's what we're here to do. But the very first thing, so welcome to the show. I'm happy that you're here.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
The big thing that you and I are connected on right now is 19 Days. Tell us about 19 Days, what it does, why, what does 19 Days mean, and what the ultimate goal is, and then we'll work our way backwards into Baghdad.
Sure. Yeah. So 19 Days is a new venture studio we launched to go in search of high value problems in any industry that we can solve by building incredibly badass B2B SaaS businesses, right? So we go probe industries, we find high value problems by working with potential customers, and we build just amazing software that people like to use to solve them. Go find an operator with expertise that can grow the business and build a whole company around it. Ultimately, with the goal of building those businesses to $5 million in recurring revenue and finding an exit.
So here's my perspective on what's going on. The challenge is there's a ton of people that want to be entrepreneurs, and you hear a couple of different things. You hear some people go, I just can't find an idea that I can actually execute on. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to go start a business. I want to be my own boss, and I want to be responsible for the livelihood of other people in my world, my ecosystem, whatever else. And I can't find an idea. And to those people, you say, open a franchise business, go be a plumber. There's a lot of ways that you can actually, solve people's problems and have a business without, needing a grand idea. Sure. And then there's the other people that are like, have a million ideas. And I've got a friend, we spent time with him in Colorado, and he's got like crazy ideas and patents, but he's never been able to execute on any of them because he's not an executionist. And he doesn't have that. He can't put like one foot in front of the other to get started.
It's a skill set. It's a different skill set.
And you're like bonding those two things. I mean, this is the like 19 Days is the essence of entrepreneurship in my mind. It's like, let's find a problem that we can solve with relative ease, right? I mean, we have to be able to put some technology together and some marketing put together, all the pieces, but then scale relatively quickly so we can get to a bunch of $1 million in revenues and then find the operations piece that goes through it and do it again and again and again. Yeah. I mean, so you're taking the heart of execution and the heart of ideas and bonding them and then doing it over and over and over. I don't know of a more entrepreneurial like endeavor than that.
Well, look, I mean, if you look at my own story, I mean, I was an employee until I left private equity to start a medical waste company. And that was my inspiration. It wasn't even my inspiration. It was my brother-in-law who saw a market opportunity, and it was one I knew that I could go execute on. It had a financial piece, had to raise some capital, had to build a building, which I did in the Navy. And so you put all those skills together, it was something I could go do. I'm pumped to have had that opportunity, but I waited my whole life to be struck by someone else's inspiration. Yeah. And what I realized is there's problems everywhere. And if you can go clearly define the pain that customers are having, you can build solutions, right? And the only reason that part sounds super easy is because my two partners, Jacob Johnson and Dan Fisher, who founded GetWit, a 50-person company that does all things digital, but where they really win is in this discovery piece where they know how to find high value problems, right? And then they know how to create and validate solutions, right? And then operational execution is all I've been doing my whole career. So you put those two skill sets together and we think we can do this over and over and over again.
Yeah. So tell me about the first problem that you guys have been working on. What are you solving?
Yeah. So the first venture that we're building, hopefully has been codenamed Deal Docs until now.
Is that a code name? It's actually not that. It's not that. That's not that like covert of a code name.
Yeah, I know. We picked it for the sake of one of the ways we validate. I'll tell you about the product here in a second. One of the ways we validate that we really have something is we make fake pitch decks and we go sell. One of the things that entrepreneurs are a little bit afraid to do is to go start talking to customers before they feel like their thing is perfect. And we think you just got to get out there and take it on the chin if you want real feedback. So our first venture is in commercial banking, right? An incredible space. Tulsa is an incredibly competitive market for commercial banking. Some of I think 3 out of the top 200 commercial and industrial portfolios are held by banks here in Tulsa. And what we did is we set out to say, how can we help commercial bankers close more deals? And so we went out, and I think at this point, we've probably talked to 50 to 60 bankers, loan assistants, bank presidents, board members, loan ops people, compliance people, and hundreds of hours of interviews to find out that the messiest part is right up front when you're trying to get all your documents to the bank. Everybody hates it. Everybody does it because it's a necessary evil. We believe it's something that we can solve and then move outward and solve a lot of other problems for banks from there. So we studied that problem for the first probably, call it 5 months of the year, 6 months, and have just hit go on building the product because we feel like we've gotten a lot of positive validation. And so to your point, what you asked me about before, the reason why we call this thing 19 days is because Albert Einstein said, if you give me 20 days to solve a problem, I'd take 19 defining it and 1 day solving it.
Right.
And that's what we do here. We focus heavy on problems.
And so what's the idea? Now you've solved the problem. Sorry, you've identified the problem. You've defined it. You're working on actually like launching a product or developing the product. And then when are you going to start defining the next problem that you want to solve? Is that happening
right
in
now.
Parallel, or is that cool?
In parallel? So the goal is to do two a year. So one approximately every 6 months. This one being sort of the first cycle, soup to nuts, has taken a little longer. We're not too far behind.
Yeah.
But we're currently running the process to pick the next venture while we build the product for the first venture, while we recruit the operator to run the first venture, while we're out talking to customers and teeing them up. And so it's wildly busy. But we believe that we want to be experts in taking companies from 0 to 1, and then let our CEOs take them where they need to go.
Not only are you like you're an entrepreneur building product, defining problems, building the product, but then you have to hire another entrepreneur to like actually run the company once you've got a proof of concept and some initial revenue. And
right.
that could be maybe one of the hardest parts. I mean, I'm an EO with a bunch of our mutual friends. And, oftentimes we get on, I'm on the board this year, and I'm trying to convince or cajole other people that have relatively large businesses to do things for free using their spare time to help us grow the organization, which is mutually beneficial to all of our members. But It's hard. It's like it's an entrepreneur trying to convince an entrepreneur to do something that he probably or she probably doesn't want to do. That's the hardest part. So like hiring somebody else in your entrepreneurial organization and like keeping the injection of entrepreneurial spirit might be the hardest challenge around.
Well, yeah. Well, the biggest misconception, as you know, about entrepreneurship is there's no free time, right? It's like, just what have you decided not to do so that
Correct.
You can make some free time?
What platform is burning?
Yeah. And so, but what I'll say is, I think it's extraordinarily challenging to go find that right person. We have a pretty strong thesis about who we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And honestly, we're building an engine that builds companies. So everything is a process. Everything is clearly defined. Everything's an experiment.
Yeah.
And everything gets tested. And if it doesn't work, it gets adjusted. So one thing we're pretty pumped about is we are beginning a partnership with Hogan Assessments to help create a profile for who will be successful. But one thing that Mr. Hogan told us, he said, in the beginning, it's most important. It's not so important to find the exact right perfect person. He said, just don't find the wrong one.
Yeah.
How
do you do that?
He kind of turned it on its head a little bit.
How do you avoid finding the wrong person? Through the assessment, presumably, but then like what actually practically
through the assessment. And then, what I'll say is a little bit challenging about this is we want to find growth focused operators. So people who have led sales teams who can focus on top line revenue growth, because we have all of the capabilities in the studio to help them with everything else,
sure.
Right. The challenge is, if you've ever hired a salesperson, the thing they sell better than anything is themselves. And I've never interviewed a salesperson that I didn't think was amazing, right? And so that's the real scary part about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is it's actually, speaking of deal docs and banking, I mean, your sales guy has to be constrained at some level. Oftentimes, I've got two of my top salespeople in the next room doing some training right now, and I always find Jonathan on my team is like there's in our leadership team and our level we run on EOS, and our level 10 meetings are always. When we discuss stuff and we idea stuff that are sales focused, it's like me and Jonathan on one side, and then Robert and Chris, who are operator guys, on the other side. It's like the risk committee and the sales guys in the bank. We're like, let's go. And the operations guys, the risk committee is like, no, hold on. Think about all the things that could go wrong and how this, might affect operations, whatever else. It's like sales guys just want to go. And sometimes they're going after the wrong things. Sometimes it's not in our business, it's not a profitable portfolio of properties to manage. So you gotta have, the salespeople also have to have some, downside mitigation or some way of assessing, what they shouldn't be going after.
Well, so much of what they're going to go after is what you've designed into their incentive plan, because the same way that water will find a crack in something, a salesperson will find the lowest energy way to maximize their commission. Totally. So if you only incentivize them on revenue, they will sign up revenue and you will lose your, Yeah.
I'm losing money on every unit, but I'm making it up in margin. No, what do they say? I'm losing money on every unit, but I'm making it up in volume.
No, all you're doing is multiplying our losses by
Yeah.
right. And so it's wild. And so, normally what I've said to most salespeople that I've hired or interviewed indirectly or whatever is I reserve the right to review the plan quarterly.
Yeah.
And it'll be a partnership and we'll change it. But I don't know what's going to work or not work until you get in there and you start.
Yeah. So you've defined the problem on the commercial banking side. You're developing a product. What's your next step? I mean, who are you going after? Who are your beta test partners going to be, or however you define that?
So, like I said, we've talked to dozens and dozens of banks. I've been really, really pumped. We've had some really positive feedback from banks that I view as sort of really looking forward to the future of banking. Like, Bank First is thinking heavily about what their borrower experience is like.
Yeah.
Because they recognize that will set them apart in the future. Regent Bank has been growing wildly. I think, the way I understand it, one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing bank in America for like the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow. And what's propelling that growth for them?
Without saying that I haven't been in it deeply, but the way that I understand it from Sean Copeland is I feel like he has really figured out how to build teams in the bank, a wildly strong culture. So he has these really strong, highly productive individual teams that are all working within a very strong, productive culture, and they're growing like wildfire. And as a side note, I don't know if you saw in the Little League World Series, that young man get hit in the face with a baseball.
No.
Did you see that video?
No. Sounds
so
brutal.
pitcher hits. So Sean is coaching that team. Pitcher throws the ball, hits the young man in the face.
Oh.
He's fine, takes his base, but the pitcher is visibly shook from this.
Wow. Yeah.
And so the player that got hit in the face walks off first base to the mound and gives the guy a hug and says, "Hey, it's fine. Like, everything's okay."
Wow.
And so it's really interesting. You've got a guy like Sean Copeland leading Regent Bank, who, when I saw that video, gave me chills, because he's out there raising young men, not just baseball players. And that's an aside, but that story,
but it ties into the corporate culture
about
of the
the
bank.
culture, of the bank, and that's why it's growing like wildfire. And then that haven't had any conversations here, but I'm really excited about one that we have coming up with the bank, with Stride Bank.
They're super innovative.
They're super well known for being innovative. So hopefully we can go get them excited about what we're doing.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. I love it. The banks in Oklahoma have been awesome.
Deal Docs. It's a not so covert name for a commercial bank.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean like
you got
alpha or something.
You got some docs, and we're going to put those things together, right?
Deal Docs. I love it. Tell us, like, what inspired you? So you were working in private equity. You were not an entrepreneur. You were working a W-2 day job.
I was entrepreneur adjacent. I was helping people, right?
Yeah.
As an operator, my job was to sit on the boards and then help people, right? Help people grow their companies and things like that. So
were those people inspiring to you? Were they the, did you feel at the time like, I want to be an entrepreneur? Or were you happy kind of coasting along, not coasting, I shouldn't say coasting, but like, were you happy cruising along with them on their entrepreneurial journey and providing guidance and structure? I mean, because oftentimes entrepreneurs they're great at so many things, but they lack the structure that's necessary. I mean, I've got Robert here in my office who provides the framework and the structure so that I can go out and, think crazy things.
Yeah. I mean, at Argonaut, we invested in a lot of really great companies, but energy services, industrials, aerospace. And most of the entrepreneurs were people who had started these businesses from nothing. One of our best investments was a midstream pipeline company. I think, father and son bought it with, I think maybe it was just some oil and gas wells or something. I converted it into I think it peaked like a $500 million revenue pipeline construction company. When we invested, the father was there's the grandfather, the father, and then the father was ready to sort of move the son into the driver's seat, but felt like he wanted some more supports around him. So we went in and supported him. Hard not to be inspired by those people who have built these amazing companies that hire, that employ thousands of people a year. And, one in New Mexico I worked a lot with, the guy just realized he could do more work out on the well site if he just made better trucks, and he started welding things to his trucks and cranes and rigs and all these things. And all of a sudden he started getting a ton of work and built it from nothing. At Argonaut, I think, so Steve Mitchell hired me. Frankly, other than being an intern, hadn't worked a day in a private business. And he said to me, no kidding, I don't think you know all that much about business, but you seem decently smart. I think you'll figure it out. And he hired me to be his first operations vice president. So learning at Argonaut, learning how all these businesses work across different industries, software, hardware technology, was incredible for me. But I just got to a point where I was starting to see a lot of the same issues in companies over and over again, and sort of got the itch to try something on my own. And that's when it was time to step out.
And like, did you have any major fears going out onto your own? You said your brother-in-law had this idea and he inspired you to do this, to take this step into the medical waste transport business. I mean, taking that first, going out of a cush salary in a relatively stable environment into the entrepreneurial journey is tough. And I used to see it all the time because partners, when I started my professional career at McKinsey, which follows the Steve Mitchell model of like, just hire smart people and put them in, they'll figure it out. But it gets you to a point where you've got these golden handcuffs. Not only is a business card pretty impressive, you have, an expense account and your per diems or whatever, you're eating a lot of steak and sushi and whatever else. But you, like, at some point you're a senior partner, you've been there 15 years and you're making $5-10 million a year. And for you, your opportunity cost to leave that cush position, even if you're not happy there, is pretty high, whatever. So to take that entrepreneurial journey from being in a nice, salary with a stable position is hard.
Yeah. I'll say, honestly, the first 3 days, I was like, what did I just do? Right.
Yeah.
But I'll say, because Steve is incredibly generous. He paid me well, made sure that I was traveling 90% of the time, sometimes 3 cities a week. And I've ever, just a testament to what the kind of guy he is. He's like, look, if you're exercising and you're trying to be in shape and you want to eat 2 chicken breasts and the restaurant won't give them to you, order 2 entrees. He's like, I don't care. Do what you have to do to be healthy. Right. Yeah. He said, pay for gyms daily, whatever you need to do to feel good. So incredibly generous guy. And I could have just stayed there. Right.
Yeah.
I could have stayed there. Fortunately, the flip side is because I was on the road all the time, my personal expenses never really grew with my income.
Yeah.
So I was pretty conservative in what I spent, just because when you're only in town 2 or 3 days a week, you can't possibly.
Sure.
I didn't have a house, didn't have a family to worry about. So the first math I did is, how much do I spend a year and how long can I be without a job? And it turned out it was like 5 years. So, so that's point number one. Number two is, no doubt in my mind, if I went back on my hands and knees crawling to Steve, he would have taken me back. I might have taken a little bit of a haircut on income or something, just because the guy loves a good deal. But
a little safety net there.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for that. And I tell him that all the time.
I mean, that's a big deal. Your point one, though, I mean, that's a critical lesson in business. How much money do you have in the bank, and how much runway do you have to kind of develop your product until you get your first sale? I mean, that's a big lesson. Tell us a little bit about, I want to hear about your U.S. Navy experience. I mean, Guantanamo Bay, which I told you I was on the Cuban side of that. I begged, you can't get up. I don't know if you know this because you're on the American side of the base.
When was that? What year was that?
2006. So I was
on the other side of that fence in 2006. I was there.
This was February. I took the LSAT. I think I was living with my grandparents in Florida. I took a little bit of time off of school. I was in Santa Barbara. Went to live with my grandparents. I took the LSAT. And then I went with my dad for 2 weeks, and he left after that. And I stayed for another 2 weeks. So I took a motorcycle basically from one of the southern towns, Trinidad or Cienfuegos or something. And I rode a motorcycle around to Baracoa. And on that journey, you pass Guantanamo, but you can't go up the mountain on the Cuban side without like a permit from the Cuban government, which requires being a tour and whatever else. So I slept outside of the town of Guantanamo, which is actually a town on the Cuban side, obviously, and at the police station under a mango tree until the next day when there was a bus that was coming, and I had a chance to like beg them to let me come on the bus with them so I could go see the thing. You go up the steep mountain, and then you have an overlook of the actual naval base. So I did it that way, which was for sure a unique experience. But at that time in my life,
100% in February, I was there on the other side of that fence.
I love it. I might have seen you driving around in a big Chevy truck.
Probably, yeah. So I was down there doing construction. I mean, it was wild. I built everything. I helped build things in our detention facilities down there. The weirdest thing I built was a go-kart track because there's families down there.
Yeah.
So the Navy closed the base and they called and they said, hey, we have this go-kart track. You want us to ship it down there so you can put it back together? And we said, oh yeah, we'll put it together down here. And if you go deep enough in Google, you can find a photo of me driving a go-kart.
That's funny.
But
how do you get that from computer engineering to, that's like civil engineering. That's real engineering in the physical space. How do you get to building a go-kart track?
In the Navy, the civil engineers, for the most part, are construction managers doing some small designs, but a lot of the work is really construction management, public works management, and then sort of combat construction. So in Guantanamo Bay, I was essentially a construction manager, and I'd spent more than a little bit of time with my dad's engineering construction company working on construction sites and building things. So the Navy can take you and train you how to manage contracts and stuff. So
and so in Baghdad, similar stuff. I mean, you're handling a lot of the construction of the forward operating bases or whatever.
No, Baghdad was a little bit different. It was a little bit more strategic. It was more like reconstruction planning. Like, what are the kinetic operators are going to go secure a neighborhood? What does that neighborhood need? Does it need a sewer treatment plant? Does it need schools? Does it need? And I'll joke. I mean, I wasn't a war hero in Baghdad. My primary job was taking data out of this database and making it into PowerPoint slides that went everywhere. I mean, just dozens, hundreds of slides a week. But because my undergrad was in computer engineering, and you remember this is 07, 08, so not a lot of software doing dashboards and things.
Yeah.
I just automated it all in PowerPoint. So I took literally what was around the clock work for 7 days and automated it into one morning. So
so you had some free time to roam Baghdad and explore the green zone?
Then I got other duties. So to answer your question about why the Navy was there, I was actually deployed to support an Army Corps of Engineers unit. So when the Army and the Marines were, Army, Air Force, Marines, everybody was spread a little thin over there. Secretary Rumsfeld, I believe it was, said that the Navy and the Air Force would support ground Army units wherever they could. And so they plugged engineers in.
But so it's actually the chronology of events. You actually you got your computer engineering degree from Tulane. You joined the Navy.
Yep. Went to afterwards in Florida. So I joined the Navy actually July of 2001.
Wow.
After my freshman year of college, they had a program where they'd make you active duty. And my only responsibilities were to make good grades and stay in shape, no uniforms, no anything. And then upon graduation, go to OCS, commission as an officer. But they paid me through college for about 3 years of college.
But then 9/11 hit.
9/11 hit. And I was, understandably a little bit worried. I called the recruiter and he told me in no uncertain terms, you are useless to the United States Navy until you become an engineer. I said, okay, thank you. I was like, does this change anything? He said, nope, you are useless. And I was like, thank you. Yeah. So
then you went to the Navy, then you went to
So I left the Navy to go to MIT. So I left the Navy to start the public policy program at Harvard. Then when it came time to find a summer internship, actually, because of my time in Guantanamo Bay, somehow my resume got floated at the Pentagon, the Office of Detainee Policy, because that was when Barack Obama got elected the summer after. And they asked me if I wanted to come help work on closing Guantanamo Bay and moving everything to the United States. So I spent about a year and a half traveling around and looking at prisons in the United States that could be detention facilities, which was it was just a wild experience. I knew it wasn't going to be my career, but to get to work on one of the president's top priorities was pretty rad.
But I mean, in terms of resource that was allocated towards that project, or in terms of like being at prisons, I mean, are these prisons that are where they're active prisons, or these are shut down prisons that are just kind of dry sites?
A little of both. The one that we ended up recommending was in Thompson, Illinois. It was a facility, an incredible facility the state had built, but not ever opened.
Wow.
And so ultimately we, got a good plan on the table, could do it cost effectively and safely, most importantly. But politics killed it. Republicans were just never going to let him have that win. And then I went back and did a year at MIT and then a semester at each. So it's really just, they let you do the two programs in 3 years rather than 4.
Beautiful. I love it. What are your next steps? I mean, 19 days, this is your full-time deal right now. How many of these problems are you going to solve before you realize it's boring and you need something more adventurous, more whatever before, and take another leap?
Well, I'll tell you, we want to build 6 to 10 of these.
Cool.
Right. And some will fail. I think the goal is to try to exit at least 2 or 3 of them. But honestly, the vision for this thing, so 19 Days is a little bit different in that it's not a venture capital fund. It's an actual operating company.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of our investors, we're still fundraising, but all of our investors are unit holders in this company. So the ideal situation is prove the model works and prove that we're the right people to do it. And then at the end of this, this first bit of runway, 5 to 7 years, if it works, we want to go raise $50 million, grow the team internally, and go launch 4 of these a year.
Sure.
Venture studios are still relatively new, but like in my mind, if in 12 years, if we've exited 10 companies and we're proving that we can, I'm just saying, if we can prove that we have an engine that builds that, I mean, this whole thing may trade at $1 billion. I think if we can stay on that path and build this thing that is just a high performance company making engine, then I don't see where I go anywhere. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's venture capital, but you actually own the entirety of each of the businesses in essence, which is wild. How much have you raised so far? How much are you looking to raise additional? In what increments? I mean, if somebody wants to write a check, I'll tell you in all transparency, we've written checks. So I'm involved in a partnership that wrote.
And thank you for that.
A sizable check. Happy to do it. And we hope that it yields tremendous dividends. What is the minimum somebody can write? What happens if they want to go into a partnership and write a bigger check? How much have you raised and how much are you looking to raise?
Okay. So we've raised a little over $6.5 million with a $10 million target. We have an option to overscribe a little bit if we need to. Our minimum investment is $100,000, and it's important to note it's a commitment. So we call the capital quarterly, so you're not coming out of pocket all at once, which makes it a little bit more of a manageable investment. And we do that because we're guaranteeing our investors the first 8% of every dollar that we draw. But also there's no reason for me to have $10 million sitting in the bank, right? That could be doing other things. So we're still looking to fill out that next 3.5 so that we can do the full 6 to 10. But the 6.5 we believe we can do really good things with. But anyone that's raised funds will tell you, especially if they're an operator raising funds, is it's a necessary evil. I want to put my head down. I want to focus on making companies. So, but yeah, if a couple people want to get together and put together an SPV to hit that minimum, that's not a problem either. We just like to, we set the minimum because we want people to really think about the investment, because it is an active investment. I mean, you have been very helpful. We're going to reach out to you 5 times a year and say, here's what we need, and I need responses. So we have an incredible investor base right now with expertise in energy, manufacturing, professional services, bank, like literally everything. And so that's really how we sort of manage that limit, is to get enough.
The other thing with raising capital, because I've done it for real estate deals before, is that if somebody, each person that gives you money is going to have some requirement for communication for, they ask a couple of questions or have, whatever, need their K1 kicked out and they're going to lose it. So they're going to call you back to get another one or whatever else. If you're doing them at like the $10,000 level and you have that many investors, it becomes a nightmare to navigate just administratively. If every person has one question or one request or whatever, it just becomes, it's like ridiculous. So if you're trying to raise $10 million, you can't do it in smaller increments and maintain your sanity, or actually do what you said you were going to do, is put your head down and actually get to work instead of doing the raising money, which is the necessary.
Yeah, because everything we do here is incredibly capital efficient. So we're not going to have an investor relations person. It doesn't make sense. But also, if you take $5,000, you run the risk of taking someone's last $5,000, right? if you set the limit at $100,000, no one gives you their last $100,000. Right?
Just take this one black chip I pulled out of Vegas.
Yeah, I mean it happens, right? And but really, we want people to have to think hard about the investment, because it is a little bit different. Because when you raise money for a real estate deal, most often you say, "Hey, I'm going to invest in this property at 101 South whatever Avenue," right? I went and told people that I'm going to build this company, a company of a type that you've never heard of. And that company is going to build companies in different industries. And they said, well, what industries? And I say, well, not so fast. Trust us.
I don't have all the answers.
I know. And what we had to do is say, look, if you believe that good process yields good outcomes, then that's what you're investing in. You're investing in process and track record, but it's a different kind of investment because we don't have anything for you to touch and feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. What are you reading? What are you listening to podcast wise? What are you watching on HBO Max? What's inspiring you personally, professionally in life right now?
Well, I'm actually waiting on a book called Founding Sales, and it's an incredibly an incredibly tactical book that seems interesting. Just ran across it, sort of researching startup go-to-market strategies and things like that. Seems like an incredibly tactical book. Pretty excited about that.
Who referred that book to you?
Well, Jacob Johnson, my partner, who's an avid reader, he's referred more books to me than I could ever read in a lifetime. But he ran across it, and because it looks so tactical, that's why my brain works. Recovering engineer, operator.
Yeah,
I need tactical books. So we're gonna take that, summarize it, and use it to inform our go-to-market engine for the commercial banking one. I'm a little, I guess I'm not embarrassed to say, lately I've been rewatching some of the Big Bang Theory, which is just a group. I don't know if you've seen that. Like that's when I'm like at home.
It's just an old comedy, right?
Yeah, it's an old comedy about, a group of guys that are physicists, pretty stereotypical nerds, and I think it's hilarious. And I think it's a little bit, I think I identify with it in some ways. I
thought you were going to say Emily in Paris or something, which I watched with my wife during COVID, during the pandemic, the first one. I'm not ashamed to say. It's like one of these really funny, quirky shows. I feel like Big Bang Theory is just an old school classic comedy.
Yeah, sometimes you got to turn on stuff and let the brain wind down a little bit. But I'm also, I'm an incredibly early riser, so a lot of my work happens in the morning, not a lot in the evening. So when it's, when it's around 6, time to wind down.
What time do you wake up?
Most days, if I set no alarm, it may be 4:30 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm like a 5:30. I'm like a 5:30 guy. I get to the gym, but have you read The Miracle Morning?
No. What's that? I'd love to pick it up.
That's a great book. He talks about 5 practices that happen before like everybody else wakes up in the morning. So it's I think like rise at 5. I can't remember exactly, but it's a portion of meditation, portion of journaling, a little bit of exercise. There's 2 other things, but Miracle Morning is a great book. And when we started Keyrenter years ago, and literally I was living in my father-in-law's garage apartment with my wife.
I remember when you started, because I remember
And Jody was always like, we're sleeping on the floor. We have a mattress on the floor. And I was like, trust me, we won't always be on a mattress on the floor at your parents' house, but we have to start somewhere. But I was doing the Miracle Morning, and I'd get up every morning, I'd exercise, I'd journal. I would do a little bit of planning for the day. I would, meditate a little bit, and there's a couple of other things. But it's great. It's a great practice, because there's so much that happens. There's so much that can happen before the chaos of the normal day starts, right? Before everybody else wakes up, before they're calling you, asking you for things, before your contractors, your vendors, your whatever are all harassing you, you can really get a lot done. So I respect you for waking up early. I'm also like, my wife's a night owl, but I'm like a 9:30, 10 o'clock guy. I'm in bed, done for the day.
Oh, I'm worthless when the sun goes down. I'm just so tired.
Yeah.
The sun goes down.
Circadian rhythm.
Yeah. Well, real quick, I totally agree. I've had mornings that are a little bit like that Miracle Morning. It is painful to sit still, but it's like you meditate and all of that, but it's an incredible investment.
Yeah.
Even I think the longest run I had was 2 weeks, and just the change is palpable. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just calm, just to sit calmly. It's hard, but it's worth it.
I'll pick it up, and this is a good reminder. I'm on record now publicly. I'm gonna give it a go. That's what they say, right? If you want to keep up with a habit, just make a public commitment.
That's right. That's another really great book, The Power of Habits by Duhigg, whatever his name is.
That's a great one.
Yeah. That's a fantastic book. And the greatest story in that is the Target, the the father who walks in with his daughter to Target, and Target has already identified her as being pregnant, even though the father doesn't know, and she's happens to be a teenager or something like that. I mean, a great book about the power of habit, the Target's relentless pursuit of data and statistics to identify the core desires
you might need.
The product that you might need. Joey Wignarajah, thank you so much. Joey's at 19 Days.
Awesome.
A venture studio here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, solving some of the most complex problems that we face, or our businesses around here are facing. So we really appreciate you both doing the hard work of the grit of entrepreneurship and also solving really necessary problems. Excited to see where the platform goes and what comes out of it. Joey, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt, and thanks for your trust and your investment.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.